Let's see, pretty different between the two of them. With my mom, she was more of like a smothering love kind of parent. So there was never a doubt in my brother and my lives that we were the center of her universe, that everything else came second. We moved to, my mom and my brother and I moved to Germany for a short time. My dad came out and they tried to reconcile. We came back to LA, things kind of imploded, and then we left and moved in with her parents, where I stayed throughout high school in New Jersey. And my dad, I think, was a little bit more dismissive or nonchalant when we were really young. One of the first Spanish words I learned was cenicero, which is ashtray, like, come get me the ashtray. When I used to wake up in the middle of the night and try to crawl into bed with them, he would just sort of send me away and tell me to close my eyes. He definitely got angry a few times. There was one incident where we lost the 8 ball from there, the 7 ball from the pool table, and he got really upset. After they tried to reconcile, and then we moved to the East Coast when I was 9 years old. From that point forward, we had pretty limited interaction with him. And I think from my mom's perspective, she tried not to taint our view and talk smack about him, but she did in a pretty big way. And so I think both my brother and I were left pretty frustrated and alienated in terms of feeling like, if he really wanted to, he would have had a relationship with us, and that we went, a couple of years at a time at points without talking to him. From his perspective, we came to find out later he didn't want to confuse us and make us choose between our parents and whatever, but that never really landed for either of us. So there was definitely a sentiment around a loss of a parent, and I definitely remember struggling throughout my adolescent years and throughout high school, really into college, where I just sort of was craving affection, not fitting in, wanting to be popular or wanting people to like me, and just being anxious and uncomfortable in my own body, basically. I think that's about
it. My parents stayed together, and my dad died when I was in college, but I was very close to my dad. Never doubted, definitely felt secure in that relationship. Felt very loved and supported, unconditionally supported, and a lot of security around that relationship, and a lot of admiration for him. He's sort of my idol. My mom, in hindsight now, I think she was more of a narcissist, and she definitely, a lot of things revolved around her, and sort of the classic narcissist thing where there was one kid who was sort of her favorite, which was my sister, and one, I wouldn't say she was bad to me, but I definitely didn't feel the same level of support that I got from my dad. And after my dad died, that went really downhill. I moved home to be with her because I kind of thought that's what my dad would want after college, and my brother and sister were out of the house. I'm the youngest, so I thought, and they were both in relationships and living with their partners and whatever else, and so I felt like I had to be the one to be there for her, and it made it really hard because she went from being really dependent on him to being really dependent on me, and then I moved halfway across the world to get away from her, and that actually made things worse because she felt abandoned. She had a lot of abandonment issues. So that relationship has definitely always been a little bit challenging, definitely more so after my dad died, but even when my dad was alive, when I was little, she had a lot of back problems, so my earliest memories aren't of my mom, they're of my dad, and my sister, and things like that. So I would say that relationship's definitely more complicated. I never doubted that she loved me, but in a very challenging way. I have this vivid memory from when I was like 9. We went to stay with my grandparents because they were living with my aunt and uncle back east, and they were going on vacation, so we went to sort of stay with them. And my mom and I went into the city, New York City, and we got lost, and we were back late. We came in, and her dad started yelling at us, and I said, you know, what's wrong with him? And she's like, oh, he was worried, and that's how he shows his love. And so that's sort of always been how she shows her love, like being kind of difficult. So it's not that I doubt that she loves me. The way she loves me doesn't feel very good. The way my dad loved me always felt very solid and supportive.
I definitely was led to believe that he wasn't faithful. It didn't really seem like he was as focused on us versus like his social life or whatever. Part of that might have been the stories I've been told from my mom, but I think I just kind of grew up not wanting to be that and do that, and feeling like being a father and being a husband were like the most important responsibilities and duties that I could ever have. So that was always like at the top of my list of what I wanted in life. And kind of back to our story, like that was what I was really struggling with, was like once I was emotionally over my divorce and I was ready to get serious, she was very much the woman that I was like most interested in, and she had told me numerous times she couldn't have kids, and it was like, initially that was sort of like a deal breaker. And over time I started questioning that because I started falling for her regardless, and then she got pregnant and I was like, oh, okay, well, let's do this.
For my dad, I think I've always really wanted someone like him. Someone where I felt like there was no question, he always had my back. And that was really unusual. And even my mom, who was kind of difficult, he always supported her, so I looked at that as sort of my role model for a partner. But I also didn't want to be like my mom. My mom was super dependent on my dad. Like, she likes to tell me all the time about how she had a successful career before him and before they moved west. But I never saw that. So what I saw was a lot of dependence. And like I said, when he died, she went from being dependent on him to me. And I never wanted to be that person, so like I've been fiercely independent, perhaps to a fault, like not wanting to lean on a partner, which makes it hard for us because I think Darrien really wants me to, and that's a hard thing for me. And then also losing my dad made me feel like things can change in the blink of an eye, so I've always felt like I don't want to be too reliant on a partner because it can change so quickly. A lot because I'm really not comfortable being too dependent on him, and I'm also worried that it could change. And also, given how we started, because there was a long time where I felt like we were moving in a certain direction and it never moved that way until I found out I was pregnant. I felt really bad, like I felt like I wasn't good enough for him to be serious about, and so it brought a lot of insecurities around that. So I've never fully, like, we've worked through some of it, but I don't think I'm fully past that, and feeling like our relationship we didn't follow the traditional trajectory of like him and I falling in love and then having a family. It was family first, and it felt like that was a big part of why we got together. So I haven't felt that sense of like he's fully in it with me, even though he says it, like he says the words. And I think that's also like a big thing of my parents. Like they both said the words, but my dad followed it with action. My mom didn't. And so that's a big, like a lot of times we talk about his language of love is words, and my language is action, like service. So that's why I said none of this came out as a surprise, because that's what really means a lot to me, is to see it in action.
I don't think there were too many times it's surprisingly or whatever, where somebody just bailed. On the family side, I think I'm pretty fiercely loyal, and and I haven't really questioned any of those relationships. And I guess on the flip side, when I've been the one where like something happened and a family member did something that was like disappointing or upsetting, I've had to kind of mediate that, and that's been really difficult emotionally for me to sort of have to be in the tough love or letting them know that their actions were hurtful or unacceptable. I had an experience like 2 years ago where one of my friends basically just dropped off the face of the earth and never explained himself to me, just like sort of stopped calling or responding. And I was kind of left wondering, like, what did I do? What happened? That definitely brought up a lot of negative childhood emotions of like wanting to fit in and not, just feeling awkward and
or letting people treat you in a way that's not super respectful, but it's more important to you to keep. But I think it's a fear of them leaving. Like that's why you allow that stuff to happen, because you don't want to lose.
Yeah, but I guess I was reading it more as like when they're gone versus like when you're together, and like what do I need to do to maintain this relationship kind of thing. So I'm thinking of it slightly differently, but in any case, I think the point is I definitely have more insecurities in my friendships and social relationships. I think the point is I definitely have more insecurities in my friendships and social relationships than in like family or romantic ones. So it's a little different between the three.
I would say my friendships are an area that I'm actually not insecure. I have pretty high standards for my friends, and they meet them. So I've been pretty of not wanting a replication of what I had with my mom. So pretty low drama. And then in romantic relationships, I think usually my standards have actually been pretty high, so I've usually been the one to end them. The only part I've struggled with is when that person moved on pretty quickly, then it doesn't feel so good. But my standards have been high, I think, because I was looking for someone more like my dad and that kind of commitment and support. And my sister often says that she set us up because Darrien reminded her of my dad. There's some similarities, but affected my romantic relationships. My friendships, I remember a million years ago now, my dad saying to me, actually, you can often judge a person by their friends, and that I had really nice friends, and I always felt that way too. And so I feel like those have probably been my most solid as my friendships. We're pretty doting. So the only thing I do worry about with him is him getting spoiled, like if we're too much. But I don't know how that necessarily plays out. It's just in my mind. When I was little, I remember him putting me down to go to sleep and telling me stories, and I have this vivid memory of it. And I know he was messing with me, where he pretended like he fell asleep and was talking in his sleep and ran to an old friend and was telling me how wonderful his wife and his kids were and blah, blah, blah. And the next morning he was like, oh, I had this interesting dream. And I was like, and my mom did that too, by the way. She didn't tell stories, but she read books to me and lay down with me. And so we're definitely involved in that way. I mean, we're pretty engaged with them. My mom is definitely engaged. Emotionally, she could be difficult, but she was there and she was present. And my dad was definitely engaged. And loving.
For me, I think like laughter and play is a big part of it. I'm always chasing them around or playing with them or whatever, just having fun with them, playing games. So I think that's a big part of it, is just prioritizing them and interacting with them. Definitely physically and verbally letting them know that he's loved, whether it's just saying words or showering with kisses pretty much all the time.
Do you know mommy loves you? And he's like, yeah. Do you know daddy loves you? Yeah. Like he doesn't hesitate, and to whatever that means. I guess he hears it enough from us, so he definitely senses it. we're still learning it. It's one of our areas of struggle.
Yeah, her language is actions, mine is words. And so in my mind, I make a very concerted attempt to like perform actions and do the things that I think should demonstrate my commitment, my love, my support, my adoration. And they don't seem to really land. And I don't know if it's because she doesn't use the language of words, so she's not telling me what I need to hear, which is like, oh, I really appreciated that, thank you. But I'm also not necessarily seeing it in terms of actions or affection or the other things. So like, from my point of view, I feel like I'm doing these things, and not only am I not getting the positive recognition, but I'm getting the negative insecurity of like, she's not getting what she needs. And so it leaves me feeling like, am I doing something wrong? Do I not know how to love her properly?
And I also think what is really obvious to me right now in this conversation is how much that's influenced by how we were loved as kids, because your mom was all about words and touch, and like that's how she showed affection. And my parents were not either of those things. I mean, they did those things, but that was not how they did it. They did it through action, very much through action and presence. And so I think my two things were like service and spending time, quality time, which is kind of nailing my parents, and words and physical is nailing your mom. So it really kind of is funny to me to think about that, like how much that does influence how we are in this relationship.
I don't think it's just my parents though. I think it's my peers. Like the fact that I was the odd man out and like didn't fit in and wanted to was super hard for me as a kid and as an adolescent, and I don't want that in my primary like romantic relationship.
Taking care of things is my way of demonstrating positive and commitment and care. His thing is like, it'll get done, or it's not a big deal. And for me, it's a big deal to take care of some of those things. So like, that's why our languages, I think, are really different on that front, which is hard. And it's also where the frustration comes.
So I think there's an interdependency. Like she was just talking about, she definitely drives more of the stuff around the house. But I definitely do some stuff, whether it's domestic stuff or like taking care of bills or, maintaining the home or whatever. Like some of it is along the lines of traditional gender lines, I'd say, but there's definitely pieces that we both own.
I think I might be more reliant on, like, he's actually the better communicator and the better emotionally supportive one, so I think I might be more reliant on him for that. And then for like taking care of things, he might be more reliant on me for that. But so maybe it's interdependent would be the better word for it.
Are you guys happy with your life
So
together?
I told Sandra about 6 months after we were dating, he took off for a sabbatical, traveling the world for 6 months, and I figured we weren't going to work out because nothing was serious. But I said to her, it's not going to work out with him, but I'm glad to know there's someone like him out there. That's the kind of person I want to be with. And I still feel that way, like he's the person I want to be with. And we have our challenges, but he's still the person I want to spend my life with. So I think in terms of, am I happy with the person I'm with and the life we have? Yes, that's not a question for me.
I am definitely happy, like this is the life that I always wanted. I have everything that I've always wanted. This is the life I always dreamed of. I think she's absolutely like the partner I'm meant to spend the rest of my life with. But on the whole, I'm absolutely happy. This is where I'm meant to be and where I always wanted to be.